you can't question the election results without being thrown in jail, unless, of course, you're Hillary Clinton, Al Gore, John Kerry, Stacey Abrams, or any of the other Democrats that said, "Not my president," for 4 years while Trump was in office. I'm Stephanie Keith.
And I am Tara Manjakovic. And we are unapologetically outspoken.
Hey everyone, happy Monday. So, we have talked a lot on this podcast about our lovely two-tier justice system and a lot about Trump and how they throw the book at him. But then you've got the Democrats that are committing crimes left and right and just getting away with it. And trust me, I'm sick of talking about it. I'm sick of talking about the Trump trials, but you've got to talk about some of this stuff because it's like you cannot make this stuff up.
Yep.
So, longtime friend of the most popular Democrats, Harvey Weinstein, just had his conviction overturned in the New York Court of Appeals because the Court of Appeals felt that he didn't get a fair trial. So just to recap, in case anyone forgot about like the biggest story of 2020, well, not the biggest, but one of the biggest, Harvey Weinstein, he is like the infamous Hollywood predator that was convicted of rape in 2020. And that's what sparked the whole Me Too movement, which I've got a lot of issues with that movement. But this guy is for sure a predator. Okay. There's so many celebrities that spoke up and talked about how they were assaulted by this guy. And the Court of Appeals says that the judge in his trial was prejudiced with improper rulings, including letting women testify that weren't actually part of the case. So they don't think he got a fair trial in New York. Imagine that. Meanwhile, Trump is sitting in court right now for something that had never been charged as a crime ever. And he's obviously not getting a fair trial, nor did he get a fair trial in the previous New York case where they tried making him pay $500 million in his bond. So, like, this state is a fucking joke, obviously. But Tara, like, what do you think about this? Do you think that the Court of Appeals will be as lenient with Trump as they are with Mr. Weinstein?
I wish if you guys are listening and you're not watching this on YouTube or TikTok, you should have seen Stephanie's face when she said that because it was awesome. But honestly, I don't think it's going to matter because the Trump trials, I'm looking at them like a whack-a-mole game. Like, did you ever play that as a kid, Stephanie?
I just played it the other day with my kids, actually.
Oh,
I enjoy
awesome.
that game.
So you know exactly what I'm talking about. And like that's what this whole Trump show reminds me of. He'll get a win in one case and it's like smashing the mole back into the hole, but then two more new trials or accusations pop up like moles in this game. And at some point like you just can't keep up because no matter how many moles you smash down with the plastic hammer or whatever it is these days, more just keep on coming. And that's how I feel about the Trump trials. And it seems to me that like the plan is just to wear him down so much with this litany of ridiculous bullshit trials that he either like dies of a stroke or a heart attack or he goes completely bankrupt and then just gives up because all his money is going to be tied up in court. He's not going to have campaign funds. And on a side note, Stephanie, where's this money going anyway? Like Trump has repeatedly paid hundreds of millions of dollars in court fees. Does anyone know where the money is going? Like,
No.
my guess is the pockets of the left. I mean, it's literally been hundreds of millions of dollars so far, and they're not done yet. Like, it's insane. But I literally can't keep up with what's going on with this man in terms of all the trials he's involved in. And like you said, I get sick of talking about this too, but I'm going to talk about it right now because there are literally over half a dozen cases going on right now in 4 different states and DC. And it's gotten to the point where last week, Trump's lawyers had to appear in different courtrooms for him while he was sitting in a courtroom in Manhattan every day. And I'm sorry, but that's insane. So I'm going to break this down in case anyone else is confused. And I saw an article in AP News and PBS covered it as well. And it detailed how, in the past week alone, what it's been like for Trump with these multiple trials taking place. And PBS is like, in my mind, a communist leftist news source at this point. And the tone of the article was really meant to highlight Trump as a criminal. But when you look at what's going on with all these trials, it's totally head spinning. And keep in mind, all this is going on while he's trying to campaign, right? So his only options, like with campaigning, are either to do it locally early in the morning before he goes to court, or in the evening after court, or to go on social media and then like hit the campaign trail briefly when court isn't in session. And from what I read, this main trial in Manhattan, where he's being required to be in court every day, they only take recess on the weekend and on Wednesdays. So Wednesday is like Trump's day to make campaign stops. And apparently next Wednesday, he's supposed to go to Michigan and Wisconsin. But again, this is after spending the rest of the week in court. And like, what about his family? Like you mentioned last week, Stephanie, they wouldn't even give him time off to go to his son's graduation. And then this past Friday was his wife's birthday and he was in court and couldn't do anything. Like, can you imagine how exhausting this is? Like,
Yeah. And
nobody,
have you seen him lately? I'm
yes, I'm
worried
going to get
about
to that.
him. Oh,
I
sorry.
know. Yeah, no, it's gonna say like nobody can keep up with this schedule and stay sane, and it's starting to show. Like
Yeah.
he's lost weight, he looks tired. The guy's not 25, he's in his 70s. And honestly, if these were legitimate trials, I would say, suck it up, buddy. Like you made your bed and you can lie in it. And I'm not saying Trump is an angel either, because I'm sure he did a lot of the shit that he's being accused of. But everything happening with these trials has nothing to do with justice. As we say frequently, it's a fucking show. It's a theater performance and it's a mockery of legitimate justice. And it's yet another confirmation of our completely two-tier justice system. And they're doing that with this series of witch trials meant to destroy Trump while the left never gets prosecuted for crimes committed that are far beyond anything that Trump's being accused of. And it's very obvious to me that the timing of these trials, multiple trials all occurring simultaneously during campaign season, like that's by design from the left to keep him from campaigning. And Stephanie, you know, if this was Biden, he'd have been dead from like a trip and fall or a mental breakdown from confusion like months ago. But at the same time, if this was Biden, this would never happen, right? Because he's too feeble minded to testify in court and yet qualified to run the country. Like, I know I'm going off on a tangent because this shit just infuriates me. So I'm going to get back to what I was originally talking about, which
It
is
makes
the
me mad too,
breakdown.
though. It's like crazy. And
Yes.
this trial right now, they're making him sit in court for all of it. He had to sit there for jury selection. So I mean, they are targeting him as a political opponent, and that everyone should be against that, whether you're right or left, because it's ruining the justice system and it can be used against anyone at this point.
Yeah. So listen to this week. This last week, right? So Monday was obviously the beginning of what is more than likely going to be one of the most historical trials in our country's history, because it's the trial that is setting the precedent for the first ever time that prosecutors are presenting a jury with a criminal case against a former president. And Trump is facing something like 34 felony charges. And this, I mean, assume you guys know kind of what's going on, but if you don't, this is the election interference case related to Trump giving Stormy Daniels the hush money payments in what the left is calling a criminal scheme to corrupt the 2016 presidential election, not even the 2020. We're going back to 2016. So the same day on Monday, in another courthouse, one of Trump's lawyers struck a deal with New York State lawyers over $175 million bond that Trump posted just so he could pause civil fraud judgment in a separate case. So that's 175 million to temporarily pause a judgment. But our courts are impartial, right? Again,
That
like
seems
where is
like
this money going?
extortion, you know?
Exactly. Exactly. So that's Monday. Then on Tuesday, you have the shit show going on in the courtroom with prosecutors saying Trump violated a gag order because he went on social media and, you know, made statements. And then you got, it's like just more crying from the left about mean tweets. On Wednesday, now let's move on to Florida. Back in the Mar-a-Lago case, right? On Wednesday, new documents were unsealed in this ongoing case about Trump allegedly mishandling classified documents after he left the White House. And then on the same day in Wednesday in Arizona, the attorney general indicted 18 of Trump's associates for their role in trying to overturn the 2020 election results. And although Trump was not indicted in that case, he was referred to throughout the trial as the co-conspirator. Now let's move on to Thursday, back to the hush money big case that we're dealing with. More arguments, more whining, more complaining about Trump violating a gag order because he made comments during a quick campaign stop that he did in the city early in the morning before coming into court. And from what I understand, the judge still hasn't ruled whether to hold him in contempt. But also on Thursday, moving on to Washington now, the Supreme Court held a hearing to discuss whether he can be prosecuted for his efforts to overthrow the 2020 election, which has now brought up a whole other issue about presidential immunity. And then in New York, in a federal court on Thursday, a judge rejected Trump's request for a new trial in the defamation case, yet another case, where he was ordered to pay $83.3 million to E. Jean Carroll, the advice columnist, for his social media attacks over her claims that he sexually assaulted her years ago. And this is just a brief overview of what happened last week alone. And these trials are going to be ongoing for weeks or months. And the left is not going to give up until Trump is either in prison or dead.
Yeah, yeah. And I want to talk about the Supreme Court hearing that you had just mentioned. So again, it's on presidential immunity, and this is really something that everyone should pay attention to. I mean, we should always pay attention to when something goes to the Supreme Court, but Trump's lawyers are arguing that he has presidential immunity on the 2020 election charges. These were the charges that were brought by that special counsel, Jack Smith, which shouldn't even be the special counsel. I mean, that guy is like totally biased. But anyhow, I want to play a clip of the hearing where Trump's lawyer, John Sorer, makes a really compelling argument. So I want you to hear what he has to say.
We know it. For 234 years of American history, no president was ever prosecuted for his official acts. The framers of our Constitution viewed an energetic executive as essential to securing liberty. If a president can be charged, put on trial, and imprisoned for his most controversial decisions as soon as he leaves office, that looming threat will distort the president's decision-making precisely when bold and fearless action is most needed. Every current president will face de facto blackmail and extortion by his political rivals while he is still in office. The implications of the court's decision here extend far beyond the facts of this case. Could President George W. Bush have been sent to prison for obstructing an official proceeding or allegedly lying to Congress to induce war in Iraq? Could President Obama be charged with murder for killing U.S. citizens abroad by drone strike? Could President Biden someday be charged with unlawfully inducing immigrants to enter the country illegally for his border policies? The answer to all these questions is no. Prosecuting the president for his official acts is an innovation with no foothold in history or tradition and incompatible with our constitutional structure.
So I think those are excellent points because he's right. It would be bad for any president. Like, we have no idea what this would do to our country. You have Obama, who, had American civilians killed abroad with drone strikes. And what this would mean is like any sitting president would have to fear that their political opponent is going to throw them in jail as soon as they're out of office. So Justice Kavanaugh brought up the thing with Obama killing the innocent U.S. civilians abroad with the drone strikes. And I want you to listen to the, convenient answer that the DOJ lawyer had in response to that.
President Obama's drone strikes. So the Office of Legal Counsel looked at this very carefully and determined that, number one, the federal murder statute does apply to the executive branch. The president wasn't personally carrying out the strike, but the aiding and abetting laws are broad. And it determined that a public authority exception that's built into statutes and that applied particularly to the murder statute because it talks about unlawful killing did not apply to the drone strike. So this is actually the way that the system should function. The Department of Justice takes criminal law very seriously. It runs it through the analysis very carefully with established principles. It documents them, it explains them, and then the president can go forward in accordance with it. And there is no risk of prosecution for that course of activity.
So for anyone who is listening to the podcast, Tara just spit out her coffee when she heard that guy talk. Or I mean, I don't know, they, them, I don't know who that was. But isn't it funny how they just have, a perfect excuse for, American citizens being murdered. But, of course, that doesn't apply to Trump because there's a two-tiered justice system. And that's what we're seeing now. You can literally murder innocent US citizens and get away with it. But you can't question the election results without being thrown in jail. Unless, of course, you're Hillary Clinton, Al Gore, John Kerry, Stacey Abrams, or any of the other Democrats that said, "Not my president," for 4 years while Trump was in office. It's such hypocrisy.
Or unless you're Biden, Stephanie. And then not only can you kill innocent Americans abroad, like his fucked up with Afghanistan withdrawal, but you can also launder millions and millions of dollars through shady foreign companies and commit acts of treason without repercussion and single-handedly try to bankrupt the United States with your overreaching policies and regulations and tons of money going to foreign countries. And to the point about how if the Supreme Court rules in favor of getting rid of or limiting presidential immunity and how it's going to impact future elections, like, I don't think the Biden admin cares because I think they're banking on their plan to not even have future elections because you don't need them in a totalitarian government. And we can argue all day long that what they're doing to Trump is illegal or unfair or a two-tiered system of justice. But the bottom line is the left does not give a fuck what we think. And as we mentioned frequently, they're going to continue to double down on their plan for total domination under the guise of, quote, democracy, unless Trump somehow manages to beat these cases and there's any semblance of an actual legitimate election.
Yeah. Yeah. And the other big news with Trump that you mentioned earlier is this current judge, Juan Merchan in New York. He's clearly prejudiced. Okay. And I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole, but he is. And he put the gag order in place that everyone's talking about on Trump and said that, he's going to throw Trump in jail if he violates it. Well, in true Trump fashion, he violated it. And the prosecutors accused him of making 5 gag order violations. And like you said earlier, Tara, this is about being mad over tweets or truths or whatever we want to call these posts now. So Trump's legal team argued that Trump's violations were him simply responding to attacks that were made against him. So these people can go after him on television. They can lie. They can make money doing TV interviews about him, completely throwing lies out there. But if Trump responds to that, he gets thrown in jail. It's so absurd, but that is what we're dealing with. Again, it's like a theatrical performance. You can't even believe it's happening. Part of me.
What? Did you see that he challenged Biden?
Yes.
to a debate or something on that. It was on the Howard Stern show or something. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but you just reminded me of that. And I didn't make any notes on it, but I saw he challenged him to a debate and Biden accepted and then didn't show up when Trump challenged him.
Yeah.
And Biden still says he's going to debate him. Really?
I'm going to debate him. I don't know when. He gives this vague thing and Trump's like, how about right now? How about at my next rally? How about, you know, you name the time, the place, I'll be there. He's got all these trials going on and he's going to make time for a debate. But, you know, Biden's too busy at his beach house in Delaware. So, yeah, Trump was like, I think my strategy should be to just like be quiet and let him talk the full 90 minutes. And, you know, I'll win that debate. But like this gag order, I have to wonder if it's not intentional on Trump's part to like violate it because he knows that he gains votes every time they go after him. And I saw an interview with his lawyer where she was like, go ahead and put him in jail. Then he'll be just like Nelson Mandela and gain even more popularity. And she's right. Like I have seen so many videos now of him being greeted by crowds of Trump fans in New York City. So it's like, yeah, he's not on the campaign trail. They're coming to him to support him. In New York City, the most blue city in the world. And there are people that'll chant, we hate Trump, but there's far more people showing up for him saying, we want Trump. And I want to play a clip from this crowd of Black people that were wearing shirts that read Blacks for Trump. And I want to play this because it's really interesting how I think he's gaining popularity with demographics that have historically always voted Democrats. So listen to like the way that they're viewing this now.
I'm glad you're doing this song. Yes, sir. Because you know Trump is the first Black president, not Obama. Trump. Trump is a real man. Yeah. You got a mug shot. None of them ain't got no mug shots. We all got mug shots, but we real black. That's why I'm glad, man. They torture him like they torture black people. And white people been being tortured like that the whole time, but they just didn't know. But they have figured out that we all together. That's right.
Okay, so then they start chanting Latin, black, and white must unite. And I think they're right. Like, we need to stop letting the Biden administration and the people on the left divide us. Like, you know what I mean? And so what he's talking about, he said that Trump is being tortured by the justice system, and that's exactly how Black people have been treated by the system. And I mean, everyone knows that. You look at the justice system, and it has been prejudiced throughout the years. And now they're seeing that happen to Trump so that like they can relate to that. So, like, all this stuff that the left is doing to Trump is actually making him more relatable to the average person that sees how corrupt our justice system is. And they realize he's not a part of it. He's not one of them. So they want him. And so it's really like turning him into a martyr. And think about it. Like, if he didn't truly love this country and want to make it better, he would have given up a long time ago. I mean, the man's entire fortune, along with everything he's built, is being taken by these Democrat DA thugs. His kids have all been under investigation. They attack him left and right, and he's still here fighting for this country and risking it all in the process. And I can't think of one single politician on the left or the right that would do the same, you know?
Yeah. And meanwhile, we have Biden, who's trying his hardest to appeal to the Black community by deciding not to ban menthol cigarettes because it upset the Black community. And, Biden is like, the Black people love me. If you don't vote for me, you ain't Black. So Trump doesn't even have to try, right?
That's the
He's not
thing.
trying to do shit. And you have the
Yep.
Biden admin trying all of this ridiculous nonsense to be relatable, and nobody fucking relates to you.
I think if he just kept his mouth shut and just goes to these trials, there's his campaign. Like, people can
Yeah.
see flat out like what's happening. And I don't think that the average person, unless you're like one of these Trump derangement syndrome people, you see that it's wrong and it makes you want to vote for him. But enough about Trump. Let's get into a fun new conspiracy that just popped up. So, you know how I am fascinated with Antarctica.
Yep.
And just in case anyone isn't aware, the Antarctic Treaty was signed in 1959, and it banned military activity and designated the continent as a scientific preserve, with each major country developing a scientific station. which I think is weird that this treaty has stood in place. No one has violated it all these years. With all the wars and everything, no one has violated it. So last year, this whistleblower came forward and started saying that there are direct energy weapons that are already developed there. It's called like the ice cube neutrino. And he was alleging that it can cause earthquakes and has already caused the earthquake in Christchurch, New Zealand. Well, 2 days after the solar eclipse on April 10th, this weather map and radar called Ventusky shows like weather recording in real time. So it shows you like waves, atmospheric pressure, wind, cloud cover, like anything you can think of regarding weather. And it was picking up this massive blob, bigger than the size of Texas, coming off the coast of Antarctica, heading towards Africa. This thing was massive, more than 2,000 miles wide. It had 80-foot waves and lasted about 24 hours, and then it vanished. So there was like all sorts of speculation on social media that this is like some UAP or some sort of energy weapon coming from Antarctica. And Newsweek reported, quote, "It proves nothing more than the fallibility of data and was caused by a model error," end quote. Then they talked about this Ventusky app, which was created in the Czech Republic, Tara. So right by you, and how we should really only trust information from the NOAA, a government agency, which is laughable because I don't trust our government agencies. I don't think most people do at this point. Well, here's the thing. If it was just an error, then how come another one was spotted on April 25th? So the new one is even bigger. It's 2,260 miles wide with 83-foot waves. And it's in the same spot coming off the coast of Antarctica. And what are the odds that, like, right after this, New Jersey wakes up to this loud tsunami warning in the middle of the night? I saw people actually posting like the sirens and the warning on TikTok, and they're like, what the hell is going on? This is Jersey. Tsunamis don't happen here. Like, they didn't even know that they had a tsunami alarm. And I looked it up, and sure enough, you had Fox 29 Philadelphia reporting on it. They said the National Tsunami Warning Center issued a test tsunami warning. I'm sorry, what? Like, when does any part of the US outside of Hawaii have a tsunami warning? Like, I live in Florida and I've never heard a tsunami warning before, not a test warning, nothing. Well, it turns out that another earthquake was recorded in New Jersey on the day that the alarm went off. So, what the hell is going on? Like, New Jersey had that earthquake that was felt in 12 states a few weeks ago, then another one the same day the tsunami warning goes off. Earthquakes and tsunamis don't happen in New Jersey. Like, we've never heard of this before. Could this blob have something to do with it? Did it trigger something under the ocean? Could it be a directed energy weapon like the Antarctic whistleblower said, where he said it actually can cause earthquakes? So, Tara, I mean, you're in the Czech Republic. I think you need to do some investigating while you're over there and go check out this Ventusky and see what the hell's going on.
Well, I will say this, as soon as you mentioned it, I looked it up, and it is indeed a meteorological company in the Czech Republic, and they focus on weather predictions and meteorological data visualization. And it's not something new. Like, their portal was developed back in 2006, and it is one of the highest trafficked weather apps in the Czech Republic. And it can analyze and predict weather developments anywhere on Earth. And if you go on their website, you'll see they use the example of how, like, a hurricane in the Atlantic Ocean has the ability to influence the distribution of pressure systems in Europe and, like, even make its way to Europe as a post-tropical storm. And it's actually a pretty sophisticated system. It's not some kind of like fly-by-night operation to be dismissed. And their primary source of meteorological data is from the NOAA and also from the DWD. So for the NOAA to say, don't trust the data from Ventusky is basically saying, don't trust data from the NOAA itself. And if you want to see how legit this company is, you can go on ventusky.com It lists all their sources for weather models, satellite layers, radar mapping, and the NOAA is at the top of every list. And this company also compiles information from all of the major European weather analysis programs throughout Europe. So for the NOAA to say don't trust it, like, okay, well, that's ass backwards because you're saying don't trust your own data.
Well, because they're hoping most people won't actually look into it and they'll think like, oh, it's just some random app. And I mean, if it was a directed energy weapon, obviously they're not going to admit that,
Right.
But if it's a model error, okay, then why is it showing up again? Like we've never
Yeah.
had that model error in all these years, and then it shows up twice in 1 month. Suspicious. Just saying. All
Just a
right. Well,
little.
I have to end this podcast on a positive note and give a big shout out to our TikTok followers because we were talking about how whenever someone leaves us a shitty comment, our followers come to the rescue and put them in their place.
Yeah.
So I did a TikTok post on Biden changing Title IX and setting back women's rights by decades. So the very first comment, of course, was from a man with the username Red Dog. And he said, quote, it's actually pro-civil rights and does more to protect the LGBTQIA plus. Always trying to make a good thing bad. Read it for yourself. So that was his post. We had 51 comments replying to his comment by our amazing followers, starting with Morgan, who said, quote, might as well tell everyone you're a predator. And she had like red flags. And then Miss says, but who protects women? No one. Then Aaron chimed in and said, when in a civilized democratic society do we have to take away other people's rights to give it to other people? D says, so you get to take away actual women's rights and give to men. I don't think so, pal. And then Reckless Burning, this is like my favorite, wrote, no women's rights should be stomped on to make men who want to be women feel more comfortable. It's women's safety and opportunities being stepped on. Sit down, sir. I was like, yes. And there were just dozens of other comments like that. So I just wanted to say thank you to all the people that speak up and stick up for what's right. Like we appreciate it, and that's what we need to do. We have to start uniting and speaking up and calling these people out. So keep it up, everyone. And we'll see you back here on Wednesday. Thanks for tuning in. If you're sick of all the crazy shit going on in our country and you want to express your support and patriotism for the show, head on over to our Etsy store at UO Patriot Chicks and check out our new stickers. The link can also be found on our website. If you love the show and you want exclusive episodes, support the podcast and join the conversation by becoming a member of our Patreon community. We'll be posting weekly member-only podcast episodes and content that isn't available on the weekly podcast. Every Patreon member will also get a free Unapologetically Outspoken sticker and updates about our new sticker release before they're made public. And be sure to follow us on TikTok at Unapologetically Outspoken. And if you haven't done so already, please rate and review the podcast. The more you support us, the more people we can reach. So help us spread the word.